I've been meaning to try to do this. I want to do it during the General Assembly because I think it's important that we continue to cover the General Assembly as it does affect our lives in the state of Tennessee. But I wanted to kind of start previewing it a little bit on Mondays. You know, call it what you will, a legislative roundup or whatever. But I wanted to have some representatives on. And I was inspired over the weekend watching some of the activity in downtown Nashville to invite my two next guests. Obviously, you know Scott Cepicky. He's been on plenty of times in the past. Representative Cepicky from down there in Murray County, normally wearing blue jeans and gathering hay. He's in suit today. Hello, Scott.
Good afternoon, everybody.
How are you?
Busy. It never stops.
Is it busy?
It never stops.
Okay. And I think this is the first time that we've had Jake McCalmon on, and I don't know why I'm having troubles pronouncing his last name. It should be easy, but hey, Jake.
Hey, Matt.
How are you? Thanks for coming on, man.
You know what, Matt? I'm better now that I've seen you.
Stop it. Stop it. Man, you need to run for public office.
So he's starting out like that already. Here we go.
Well, I figured, like I said, the whole salty comment that I heard on the way over, I got to be on my best behavior.
I get grumpy when I get hot, and I'm wearing this big old sweater, and I think I'm going to get hot. I'm going to get hot about this, and I wanted kind of a representative sample. I would invite Democrats on, but they never come. But I wanted kind of a sample of the temperature of the House with regard to some of the things going on more broadly nationwide. And if there's something that the state of Tennessee needs to say from an elected perspective about what's happening internationally, because I'm seeing a lot of pro-Palestinian marches. I'm seeing a lot of what I would consider almost pro-Hamas organized events in the city of Nashville. And I actually saw some elected officials, specifically Senator Heidi Campbell, out at an event over the weekend. And so I thought of you, Jake, just because we saw each other last week. I thought I need to get Jake on anyway, and I'm always thinking about Cepicky over here. Jake, I want to start with you. I mean, did you see the events going on this weekend? And is there anything that the General Assembly ought to say as a body regarding what's going on internationally that affects us so much nationally with regard to the Israel situation?
Sure. Yeah, I was at the pro-Israel rally last week. I did see the events over the weekend with a few of the members of the General Assembly attending the pro-Palestinian rally. I think we as a body should be standing for Israel. They're a great ally of ours. When you look at what they've had to endure as a nation, I mean, they need our help. They need our support.
Scott Cepicky, you saw Heidi Campbell. You know Heidi.
Mm-hmm.
She was at it was described as a pro-Palestinian event. I could make some arguments about how I would describe it, but I'll describe it the way they did. What were your thoughts when you saw elected representatives standing alongside the pro-Palestinian folks?
Well, as Jake said, Senator Campbell was at the pro-Israel event on Friday and spoke at the event. Wasn't there, but also spoke in support of Israel. And then 48 hours later is standing at a pro-Palestinian. And I agree with you, the way this whole thing shakes out, Matt, is if you're telling me you're pro-Palestinian and you're pro-ceasefire, then that's telling me that you are supporting what Hamas did into Israel.
Absolutely.
Period. In the story. And for an elected, and I'm going to go out on a limb here, for an elected representative of the great state of Tennessee to be standing with a group of people that supports a terrorist organization of extremists whose sole intent is to eradicate someone because of their religious background is against every bone in our fiber here in the United States. And there should be repercussions for that individual, especially representing Nashville, which has one of the biggest Jewish populations in the state. It's a slap in their face.
You know, I'm a free speech guy. I mean, it's what I do for a living. And I think it's what separates our country from so many others, that we don't believe in denying an individual their right to speak, even if it offends other people, even if it just offends our nation's sensibilities. But I see a dangerous trend going on around the world, and that is overtly anti-Jewish speech. And it's not that they make it. That's one thing. It's a lack of condemnation that frightens me more than anything. I mean, it reminds you of history.
Sure. Well, I mean, for me, we've got the freedom to say whatever you want to say, but that doesn't mean that it's right. Doesn't mean that it's morally right. I mean, you have a nation where a people throughout centuries and millennia have been, they've been persecuted throughout history. This is no different. This is just another chapter in evil people wanting to eradicate the Jewish people.
What if Heidi was to say to you, Scott, well, I was just there just to see what it was all about? I mean, is that fair?
No. And I'll tell you why. Because as volatile as this situation is right now, as a state representative, your being there is an inherent support of that project, right? By her being at the pro-Israel, you say she's supporting Israel, right? As a state representative or a state senator or a congressman or a senator, there is a above and beyond when you show up somewhere that you are in support of something. I go to animal cruelty events, to trying to fight against animal cruelty. That means I support those groups who oppose animal cruelty. When you go to an event that is pro-Palestinian and pro-ceasefire and pro-Hamas, even if you just happen to walk by and you stop and you listen and you hear the rhetoric, either you stand up and say, no, that's not right, or you're part of it. And I think by her being there, she is trying to play both sides of the fence here.
Listen.
Representative Justin Jones, who is, I believe, known to both of you as a member of the House of Representatives.
Yeah, a little bit.
I think you've heard the name a time or two. He has publicly declared, Scott, you just directly spoke to this, so I'll start with you. He's publicly declared that we need to be pro-ceasefire in the state of Tennessee.
Well, and I've made comments about this already about Representative Jones. It is to me, it's reprehensible that a state representative would do that. And I said this very plainly. Maybe he needs to go visit those Israeli families that had their babies and their women and children mutilated by these people, these animals, and these extremists whose sole existence is to kill Jewish people, just to kill them, no matter how they can get to them, and to take them prisoner. And the way they did it, for a state representative to fall on the side of those people, I think is something that is in the General Assembly, we need to take a look at that when we come back into session.
And Jake, you made this comment to the Tennessee Star. I'll read it to you and let you reflect on it further. You said that grandstanding on socialist talking points does nothing to protect the innocent. Wiping out abhorrent terrorist regimes will. And it's kind of going directly to this concept of, and Scott and I were talking about this right before we got on air, this idea of ceasefire. I mean, that's what Hamas wants, right?
Sure.
That is a part of their warfare is expecting that the world will demand that Israel stop responding.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's that way they could play catch up. I mean, it's Israel's having to play whack-a-mole, and a call for ceasefire does nothing but just allow Hamas to, rebuild their resources. I believe that if Israel's going to be safe in their own backyard, Hamas can no longer remain a point of power within that region.
Well, and for me, and I was saying this last week and the week before, that I understand having a human concern for civilians dying in Gaza. I get that. And many of those civilians would describe themselves as Palestinians. And many of them, I don't know which, don't really support Hamas. But a large portion of those people do. I mean, there was a reason that they were elected above the Palestinian Authority in 2006, and now some would say, well, they don't allow them to have elections anymore, and well, if that's the case, then the Palestinians should be looking at the Israelis as liberators. That they're coming in here to liberate us from the dictatorial regime of Hamas, and now at least we can elect the government of our choosing. But that's not what they're doing.
No. Well, you're absolutely right. The Israelis are going to defend their country, and like Representative McCalmon said, yes, Hamas wants a ceasefire. It allows them to reorganize, it allows them to recruit, restructure, right? Go out and get money from Iran, and bring it in and rebuild their sources, rebuild their networks, and then launch another attack in the future. And eventually, they are evil. And evil has to be exterminated. You have to get rid of it so that peace can have a chance. As long as you have this Hamas and Hezbollah, peace is not going to happen because those two groups' sole intent on this earth is to kill Jews, period.
And for those of us, and I think I speak for all of us when I say that we're believers, we recognize that there's an important religious component to this. And whether, I said this after 9/11, that we cannot look at this as a religious war all we want. They do. And whether we recognize it or not, they do. And I think it behooves us as Christians to recognize that they do. They look at this as very much a religious conflict, and it helps reset in my mind. It gives me a sense of peace that all of this is by design, but at the same time helps me recognize just what you said, Scott, that it is you're dealing with evil.
Sure, and I mean we've seen it in history. I mean, you've seen it in World War II. Appeasement doesn't stop evil from progressing. All it does is tell them, okay, well, we can continue on. What stopped Germany in World War II was the fact that we said, we're not going to just allow you to continue to take over territory. We're going to fight back against you. You cannot just say, okay, we're going to have a ceasefire and let Hamas, go to round two. Israel should stamp them out.
Well, and to expand on that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let's remember, before Israel went into Gaza, they dropped leaflets telling people to get out.
Mm-hmm.
If you aren't part of this, right, get out. Come to our lines. Come to the lines. We'll identify you. We'll get you through, and we'll get you to the humanitarian aid behind you. The people that are left in Gaza should be the enemy combatants.
Yep.
But here's the other problem. Egypt has closed their gates.
Mm-hmm.
Egypt doesn't even want the Palestinians because they know that it's going to cause them problems in Egypt. And Hamas has closed the Rafah gate themselves. They're not even letting people get the opportunity to get the freedom.
Well, and Egypt understands what I just look at history for examples of where this has happened before. And in the Vietnam War, one of the biggest issues for the United States of America was understanding who the friendly folks were in Vietnam and who weren't. Mm-hmm. And those that were evil, that were against us, very quickly realized if they hid behind the cloak of, hey, we're friendly, then it gave them better access. I think the Egyptians have understood that for a while, mm-hmm. that they can't discern amongst the Palestinian people who are the terrorists and who are not the terrorists, and so they're like, we're just not dealing with any of this.
So they closed their border,
right?
Kind of like maybe what we should do. And
that kind of circling it back to home and to what you guys do in the General Assembly. I think this is only going to exacerbate the issues that we're seeing at the southern border with regard specifically to the really bad people. Now, we need to shut it down altogether. But it's one thing that there are people coming to try to secure a better life. That's one thing. It's another thing that there are people coming that are trying to do bad things, like sell drugs. Yeah, that's another thing. It is an entirely next level concept that there are literally terrorists coming into our southern border. And I'm wondering if there's anything we in the state of Tennessee can do about that absent a new president, Jake.
I mean, we've seen it happen. Every state's become a border state, and this is kind of, is there anything we could do from the state here in the state of Tennessee? I mean, we've sent our opinion to the federal government, but absent a new president, I don't think. I mean, when you have a president that is coming down hard on the state of Texas for trying to secure their own border because the federal government won't do it, and then the federal administration, the Biden administration, says, no, open it back up. We're going to sue you. I mean, he's actively, it's not just he approves of the borders being open and all sorts of the fentanyl crisis we've got. It's coming largely from the southern border. They've got, it's not just folks from Central and South America that are coming across this border.
The human smuggling issue,
Sure,
the child smuggling issue.
Hey, trafficking is a huge issue.
Right.
We need a change at the top at the federal government if we're going to do any meaningful change and any meaningful securing of our southern border.
Final thought on this, Scott?
Tough times like this call for brave people. And brave people are going to have to be bold, and we're going to have to stand up on that wall and defend not only Tennessee, but defend the Republic and make sure that the people in the Middle East, the other countries in the Middle East, know that this is Israel's and Hamas's fight. Everybody else stay out of it. You stay out of it, we stay out of it.
Jake McCalmon, Scott Cepicky, thank you for representing this great state the way that you do, and thanks for stopping by and talking to us about some international politics. I appreciate you.
My pleasure.
Thanks, Matt.